Took a few weeks to sit and think it all over, kids. Went down a genealogical rabbit hole and found myself wearing Ken the Zen socks. And I'll tell you all about it on the other side. Hello, you're listening to the John Huff podcast. Oh, yay. Here's a hot tip for all you would-be podcasters out there. You know who you are. One of the biggest things I can tell you, one of the most important rules, one of the best pieces of wisdom I can impart to you, from now 70 plus episodes of whatever I'm doing here, is when you sit down to record your show, whether that's an interview show or a round table show or just a solo thing like I'm doing, make sure you kick your cats out of the studio before you begin recording, okay? That's the best piece of advice I can give you today, man, because I sat down to do this one, and I got about 3.5 minutes in, and I started to flow just a little bit, and, you know, in my headphones, I'm picking up this rumbly sound, this sort of chaotic sound in the background, and I'm like, what's that sound? I'm not making that sound, man. And I looks over my shoulder at the office chair, which is sitting behind me, and there's one of my cats just going bananas, man. My friend Stace calls it the zoomies. If you have cats, you know what the zoomies are, man, and it's when cats just kind of go bananas. And it can't be explained. Cats just sometimes lose their minds, man. And my cat's behind me on the office chair, losing her mind. And I don't use that office chair when I'm recording because it's a noisy office chair, all right? And all that stuff bleeds into the recording, and then if you're like me and you're just a little bit anal about it all, you can't deal with having that noise coming through in your pod, man. And so my cat's making a ruckus. The technical term, the clinical term is a ruckus. She's making a ruckus back there, so I gotta stop what I'm doing, and I got to pick her up, and I got to remove her from my little studio, all right? And then I got to start over again. I got to rebuild the flow. I got to rebuild the momentum. And my voice sounds weird today, and I'm not even sure why. And so I don't know if she has something to do with that or not, but my advice to you kids, if you're getting ready to record your first podcast episode, unless your cat is a guest or a co-host, or it's about the cat, or it's about cats more generally, keep the cats out of the studio, man. I knew that would happen. I knew it would happen. And I knew I should have got rid of her, and I didn't. And I paid the price for that. So that's my wisdom for you, kids. Keep the cats out of the studio while you're recording. Because if you don't, they're gonna wreck it. They're going to make a ruckus, kids. And then you're going to have to start all over again. But yeah, the office chair is behind me, and I'm sitting on my drum throne because it's quieter. And I don't know how much I got, man, because I am once again in the midst of the back spasms. And that seems to be happening semi-regularly these days. And if we're going with that old philosophy, as within, as without, I don't know, something's bad inside, man, because it's projecting outward and I got the pain going. And I don't know if it's related to the AZ vaccine, the first shot of which I got on Friday AM. And I know that that causes muscle aches, okay? I know that it affects muscles in some way. And if you want to know what the AZ vaccine feels like, here it is, okay? And the musicians among my listenership will understand what I'm talking about when I say it feels like this. Getting the AZ vaccine feels just a little bit like you played a late night gig last night. Like you packed up all your gear and you drove down to Toronto, and the band went on at midnight. You know, the fourth band in a 4-band lineup. Maybe the third band in a 4-band lineup. Maybe you played Canadian Music Week. And there were like 6 bands and it went all night, and your band went on at midnight. And you played your 40-minute set, you played your 45-minute set, played 9 songs, you gave it your best. Didn't have to hold anything back for another set, man. You laid it down. Then you stripped down your gear and you got yourself off the stage, and it was about 1 o'clock. And you hung around chatting with the other bands. Maybe you checked out who was playing next. And you had a couple of drinks. Maybe you had yourself a hot dog somewhere. And more likely you had McDonald's on the way home. But let's just say you just hung around after the show, chatting with the people, signing some stuff, or you stood by your little merch section at the back of the club where nobody can see it, and not a single person came by to purchase your EP. But you stood there, for a professional amount of time. And then you gathered up the gear and you loaded it into the car. And by that point, it was about probably 1:30 or 2 a.m. Got yourself on the 401 heading back home. No other cars on the highway. You stopped at an Ontario truck stop. And en route on the 401, you went to the bathroom. You might even have bought yourself a little coffee from the Tim Hortons, which is still open. More likely, you went to the beverage machine. You got yourself a green tea ginger ale just to get you through the rest of that ride home, all right? And then you came into your hometown where you came from, whether that was L-Town or Kitchener or someplace. And it's about 4 o'clock, 4:30 a.m., by the time you load your gear back into the house, and then you go to sleep, all right? Then you wake up the next morning, and even if you get up at 10:30, 11 a.m., it's like you've been in bed for 6 or 7 hours, you still feel like you were out until 4:30 a.m. playing a show last night. And that is just what the AZ vaccine feels like the next day. Now, the AZ is the AstraZeneca, kids, all right? And I know that there's like kind of a hierarchy happening now. Like people are holding out for the Pfizer. I want the Pfizer vaccine. People are throwing around weird statistics and efficacy studies and all this crap. And for some reason, the 50 to 60, 60 to 70 group, that cohort, for whatever reason, didn't seem to jump on the AZ vaccine. And then one day they said, hey, all you 40-somethings, all you Gen Xers, you want to come get the AZ? We've got like millions of them, so line up. And that's what we did, kids, because Gen Xers, we bounced around in the backseat of cars when we were kids, all right? We played with lawn darts and baseball bats. And we were allowed to go out roaming the neighborhood on our own. We're not afraid of the AZ vaccine, all right? So we went out, and I went out Friday, and I got my first AZ shot. And boy, you know what? The shot actually going in, nothing to it. Piece of cake, man. But then, it took for me about, first of all, I felt symptoms right away, but I'm pretty sure that was psychosomatic. Pretty sure I talked myself into that. But it would, maybe 12 hours later, started to feel what you feel. A little bit of muscle aches, a little bit of chills. That happened kind of overnight. And then the next morning, it felt like I'd been out in Toronto playing a gig the night before. So you had that kind of thick behind the eyes kind of feeling, that sort of velvet behind the eyes and some muscle aches. And on Saturday, I went out and I cut the grass because I'm a responsible homeowner. I have a responsibility to the neighborhood like Sam Kinison. And then I'm just pulling some weeds and clipping the grass along my little concrete patio. And I turned in such a way that all of a sudden I was just having a back spasm. Now, normally what happens with the back spasm is it goes, like you bend in a certain way, you turn in a certain way, you reach for something. And if you're prone like me and you have an injury, it goes, it's an instant. It's like an electricity thing. It's like a sizzle that goes through you. Wham! And you just know you're hit. Bang. This did not happen like that. This was like, I don't even know what I was doing. I was just sort of twisting to cut something with my little clippers. And it's like it went zzz. It's like somebody turned down a fader. It was like, they pulled the plug on a fan and it just went zzz. This sort of thing went across my back. And then I was just in spasm. It was not an electric thing. It was a fader. And I was suddenly, it's like a cramp happened. And then I was just in spasm. And I'm like, what just happened? And I know that muscle aches and that kind of stuff are a typical side effect of the AstraZeneca vaccine. And I'm wondering if you have vulnerabilities in a certain part of your body, physical ones like I do, whether it affects that too. And it might, but I had also done some kind of leg exercises a few days before in my little home gym, and that can trigger things or that can make me extra vulnerable. So I don't know if it was a combination of factors, but I went into the back spasms on Saturday, didn't demobilize me. I was crawling. I was crawling only to protect myself. I could have stood up and walked. Well, I could have stood up and hobbled if I needed to. But in the absence of needing to, I opted not to. So I was crawling, and I'm better now. Sunday, it loosened up a little bit. Today, it's a little more loose, and that's how it goes. It's like it grips you tight, and then the grip begins to release. It's like those blood pressure things, those blood pressure sleeves, You go to the drugstore and there's always like a line of old people getting ready to sit down and put their arm into the strap. You put your arm in and you hit go, and then it gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and you think, what happens if this thing malfunctions right now? And it squeezes my arm to the point of damage and won't let go. Do you have these paranoid thoughts? Am I the only one? And is that what's destroying my life? Maybe. But I don't know, that thought always kind of goes through my mind. Like, what if this is the time when the machine goes haywire and it squeezes my arm right off? Anyways, it feels like that, right? Spasm is like when that blood pressure sleeve is gripped on tight. And then it does its thing, and then it releases kind of slowly, right? Well, that's what happens for me with back spasms. They release slowly over kind of the space of a few days, depending on how severe the spasm was. This was not full lock on. This was discomfort and definitely can't move properly, but not I'm fully on the floor and can't get up. And then it's releasing, and it's still releasing now. And I say all that because I'm on the drum throne, because it makes less noise than the office chair, but it does not support my back super well, which means I'm going to get tired in the lower back region, and that might mean I don't know how long I can last here. But I didn't want to leave you hanging, man, and I am wearing, I'm pretty sure, Ken the Zen socks, which got mixed up with mine during a laundry stop somewhere in Europe, perhaps as far as 2 or 3 years ago, all right? But I hold on to socks, man, when I get them. And this is one of the things, it's an all-advice podcast, I guess, today. My advice is keep your cats out of the studio when you're recording. And when you're on tour, get distinct socks, okay? Because it's going to happen, especially if you're out long enough that you're going to need to do laundry. Like if you're out for a couple weeks, maybe even 3, you can bring enough socks and underwear that you can just use them, put them in the dirty pile, carry on. But if you're out for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, chances are you're going to need laundry, kids. Now, there are things that you do every chance you get when you're on the road. Laundry is one of them, okay? Shower is one of them. Go and pee. That's one of them, too. Any chance you get, whether you need to or not, you do those things. And laundry becomes pretty vital, okay? You still got to pack, you have to pack somewhat carefully for the road. If you're out for 6 weeks, you got to bring enough that you got a cushion, but you can't bring, supplies for every day. You can't bring socks and underwear for every day because there just ain't room, man. Especially if you're an indie outfit and every spare piece of room in your luggage is filled up with CDs to sell and t-shirts and you know what I mean? Like you're bringing the merch along too. You have to pack somewhat economically, and that means that at a certain point, you're probably going to need to do laundry. Now, there are some road dogs out there who will bring enough socks and underwear for every dang day, and then when they're done, they'll just throw it out, That's not environmentally friendly, all right? I don't do that, and I don't like to wear cheap socks. So you're going to need to do laundry, and here's the thing. You pile everybody's laundry in because you stop at a German laundromat and you have to arm wrestle the locals to get one of the machines, but you have to be strong about that, kids, because you have only so much time because you got a gig that night that you got to get to. So you're arm wrestling people for who gets the machine. They don't have a gig to get to. They can wait. But you can't wait, and you got to pile all your stuff in together, man. Everybody's clothes go in. All the bras and everything, it all goes in. And then when it's done, and the German washing machines at the laundromat and the dryers in particular have ravaged your clothes, you put them all on a big table and you start sorting them and folding them and whatever, and you don't know whose freaking socks are whose, man, because everybody's wearing the same dang socks. And then 2 years later, you're going through your drawer trying to find a pair of socks, and you got Ken the Zen socks because you know dang well they aren't yours. You know your own socks. Once you kind of get them separated, and it's after the fact and you're not living in that tour moment anymore, you don't have tour brain on anymore and you can focus, you realize these aren't my socks, man. So I'm pretty sure I got at least one of Ken the Zen's socks on right now. And if you're looking for it, Ken the Zen, I've got it, all right? Which means you probably got one of mine, man. Maybe we need to do an exchange after the latest stay-at-home order is lifted. I didn't mean to do 18 minutes on socks, but I got the AstraZeneca, so I'm feeling good about that. And I don't know, like my arm still hurts. That was Friday morning. And here we are. This is dull, dreary Monday, kids. And I lift my arm up and I'm like, oh yeah, that hurts. It's like sore. The shot lingers, man. And I did feel kind of rough over the weekend. I felt very much like I played a show late night and drove home. And that's okay. That's a familiar feeling. Felt a little bit like home, didn't mind. So if you haven't got the shot yet, go get the shot. And it's okay. Some people have no side effects whatsoever. Other people, it's like they got kicked by a mule. Most of us fall somewhere in the middle. Probably get a little bit of chill going. Probably feel some thickness behind the eyes. My wife had a pretty substantial headache. I think it probably exacerbates whatever you're prone to. She gets headaches. She got a bad one. I get back spasms. I got a fairly bad one, So I don't know, whatever it is for you, it might exacerbate that, but it's fine. It goes away. And then we can begin, hopefully, resuming something close to normalcy. Wouldn't that be nice? So I haven't been around in a while. I know that. I didn't intend to take 3 weeks off, but I wound up taking 3 weeks off. Why? I don't even know. It just kind of worked out that way, man. I don't want to do these episodes if I feel like I got nothing to give you. I'm not sure I'm giving you anything right now, to be honest. But here I am, because I got Ken the Zen's socks on, and I felt like talking about that. But here's what happened. So over the last 3 weeks, I did something pretty cool, which is I went down the genealogy rabbit hole. I do that once in a while. Every now and again, I get kind of fired up about my family history, and then I go poking around and I find out all the stuff that I already knew. And then I cancel my free Ancestry trial membership. And then I go on about my merry business. But this time, something happened that's very exciting, kids. I was poking around and I found a family tree that included my grandfather, all right? On the Huff side. Now, I had been searching through the German side of my ancestry. That's the Reinhardts. That's my paternal grandmother's side of the family. And I was not getting far, okay? I was trying to find out where these folks came from to figure out if I had visited wherever they came from in my travels. And then, I didn't get far with that, and I thought I would just do a random check on the Huff side, which I also assumed was German, okay? I've been led to believe this at times, that the Huff side came from Germany too. So imagine my surprise, kids, when I found my grandfather in a family tree. It was him. A man I don't remember ever meeting. My only memory of him was seeing him in his casket when I was like 4 years old. But I found him. And then this family tree, I don't know if you've ever been on Ancestry, but it's quite amazing how many people you're related to, man. You will find your family as a twig or a branch in a family tree among hundreds of thousands of people. And you extrapolate that out, and you find millions of people that you're related to. It's pretty cool, man. It's also a little bit strange. So you find your grandfather in some stranger's family tree, just an offshoot, and there was a listing of his father, and his father's father, and his father's father's father, and his father's father's father. I'm doing a ghost thing. Has everybody seen the ghost thing? Gotta go online and watch the ghost videos. But there was a whole lineage, man, and it went back 9 fathers. A direct lineage of 9 fathers back to the year 1594 to get this, the Netherlands, kids. Now, I knew there was some Dutch in the family tree. I didn't realize it was a direct lineage. And then I jumped on one of the people in that tree, and I went searching, and I found another tree that takes it back even further from there to the year 1500-ish, to a cat called Joris Brinkerhoff. Joris, possibly Hendrik Joris Brinkerhoff. Brinkerhoff. What you get is different spellings of people's names, or people jump on first names, second names. It's once you get back 600 years, all right, we start getting into sort of disputes about who's who. And then you're dealing with words in Dutch that you don't understand and names that don't really mean anything to you. But there was a cat called Joris Brinkerhoff, born apparently around the year 1500. And we're not sure exactly where, but a couple generations later, they're in an area called Woerden, Netherlands. So I go looking at Woerden, Netherlands, and what do I find? That area of Netherlands is about smack dab in between the town of Apeldoorn, where my bass pedal exploded, I told you that story, on tour, and the town less than half an hour from the town of Winterswijk. Winterswijk, Netherlands, where we had the Sarah Band, what I have gone on record as saying was the best show we've played in Europe. Now, Winterswijk is this beautiful little town. They're all beautiful little medieval towns, man. They have a medieval town center with a town square. These old buildings, and then it's like, rings on a tree. The further out you go, the more modern it becomes. But our friend Joost, the Joostist with the mostest, who is our gear guy in Europe, also has a hotel right on the town square in Winterswijk, Netherlands. And Joost is one of these ambitious guys. He's one of these do-it guys. He comes up with an idea and he makes it happen. Thus the hotel. He's got this beautiful hotel, and right in the town square, Joost decided he was going to have himself a music festival, all right? Now, Joost is a guitar player, and he plays in a band, and they're super cool, and he wanted to have the Sarah Band in to headline this thing in the town square in Winterswijk. And that was on our last go around, all right? And so we get to Winterswijk, and at that point, I think we were about 4 weeks into a 6-week tour, all right? A 6-week tour where we were playing something like 35 shows. So we had just done a month in Germany. It was great. We were totally freaking exhausted, man. The schedule was hammering. The schedule was relentless. And so we get into Winterswijk, kind of physically running on fumes. But anytime we sort of get into the Netherlands, there's just a lightness, man. We all love the Netherlands. There's just such a beautiful energy in the Netherlands. I can't even say what it is. We love Germany too. Germany has its own great energy. It has its own great people, and we love them. Netherlands has a different vibe. It's a different country, man. And anytime we get there, it's very Canadian feeling. And every time we get there, it just kind of feels a little bit like home. And we've done a month in Germany, and we slide into the Netherlands, and here we are. We're feeling great, but we're so tired, man. You're on the road that long, it gets to you, man. It does wear you the freak out, man. So we get to Winterswijk, and there's a tent set up, and there's a rock and roll playing, and we load into kind of Joost's hotel, man, which is beautiful. It's right on the town square. It's great. Really nice hotel. And we go down, and the bands are playing, and we're having a glass of wine, whatever. And it's really cool, man, because to that point, we had been playing a lot of shows in small venues, right? And that's great. Like, we'd been in some listening rooms. I've talked about listening rooms before. And we'd played a couple of small theaters, which was great. And we played, a chocolate shop. Like some really small places where we got to play really contained. We got to play quiet, and I'm using like my multi-rods, and we're keeping the volumes down, playing with some control. And that's just a professionalism thing, but it's not always easy to do, all right? And sometimes you just want to rock and roll. We had not much had that opportunity. And then we get to Winterswijk, where it's a beer tent. There's like 200 Dutch folks in there, some of our German friends, a nice group of people who are our people, which was just great. And then this beer tent full of folks who are just there having a good time. This is pre-COVID, man. A group of people just having a good time. And it was loud, and it was boisterous. Pretty cool stage, some lights and all that stuff. It's like, we're going to have a good time here, man. And so, I don't know how long it was. We're maybe half an hour before we're supposed to go on, 45 minutes. And Ken the Zen and Denny Boy and me are kind of side stage getting ready, right? And for me, that involves doing a lot of knee-a-diddles. Do you know about knee-a-diddles, kids? So I'm doing like hand warm-ups, right? Just trying to get my fingers ready, trying to get my wrists ready, trying to get in the zone, man, to play a show. And I'm playing Paradiddles on my knee. Now, if you're not a drummer, Paradiddle is a sticking pattern, all right? It's right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Over and over and over and over and over. Now, it's a drum rudiment, okay? I'm not a great player of Paradiddles, but I'm working out some stuff on my knee, just getting ready. And so we call them knee-a-diddles, and I have almost no feeling left on the top of my right leg, okay? From doing knee-a-diddles before shows. And that's cool, man, that's an occupational hazard. But we had been on the road for a month. I had not been sleeping. We'd had a little bit of red wine to sort of ease us out a little bit, and grease that track. And I'm sitting there on a stool doing knee-a-diddles, and then I'm just kind of asleep, man. Supposed to be getting warmed up and supercharged to play this show, and I am kind of out. Literally in a daze, half asleep, on a stool, side stage. Going on in a few minutes. And Ken the Zen and Denny Boy, great friends and bandmates that they are, instead of snapping me out of it, snapped a photograph, man. So there's a wonderful photograph out there of Ken the Zen, like a selfie. Ken the Zen and Denny Boy looking at the camera, and between them, behind them, you see me slumped over asleep, drumsticks in hand. And that was a memory that I shall cherish forever. So then I did eventually wake up. We go up on stage, and I rearrange the onstage drum kit, took most of the drums and cymbals away. Kick, floor, snare, baby, that's all we're using on this tour. My favorite setup. And it's like, wow, it's loud, man. We can play for real. And I got to use my real drumsticks, and the band got to turn up their amps. And we just played what was a release, man. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. You've been so confined, for like a month of shows. And then you've got road stress behind you and you're tired. And then to just get up on stage and to just funnel that out. And be able to just play. And we played a little bit sloppy, and we played a little bit loose, and the crowd was drunk, and they loved it, and we crushed it, man. It was my favorite show that we have played in Europe, because it was a release, because it felt so good to just take all of this pent-up road grit, and then just let it go, man. And we were just out of it, tired, loopy, silly, and we rocked it, man. It was so great. Winterswijk holds such wonderful memories for me. And then we fast forward a couple of years. I'm down the genealogy rabbit hole, and I realize, holy crap, direct line here, kids, direct lineage. Father times 11. And I come from here. Amazing, man. I had no idea just how Dutch I am. And I don't know how many Sarah fans are listening. I don't know how many of them hung with me after I stopped doing interviews. But for all of you out there who are the Dutch Sarah fans, guess what? I'm one of you. And I'm a German too on the other side. I am a classic imported Canadian. I am a mutt. Got the Irish, got the Scottish, got the German, got the Dutch. And the Huff name, Brinkerhoff, was eventually shortened, I think when somebody came to America in the 1600s, to Hoff/Huff. You get a lot of different spellings of names, but it was originally Brinkerhoff. I don't know, I'm going to have to get one of my Dutch friends to tell me how they would say that, but Brinkerhoff was, in fact, my family name. You go back 11 fathers, the Brinkerhoffs. Shortened to Huff, and that's me. And I played in Apeldoorn. I played in Winterswijk, right from the area where the people came from. And if we had known that going in, I could have called the local newspaper to tell them. The prodigal son returns 11 generations later. Cool, man. And then after that show was over, somehow we wound up being the teardown crew. Ken and Denny and me are carrying cabinets and speakers and lights and breaking stuff down. It's like, we're the headliners. What happened here? Now we're the road crew. But after that was done, and this is, man, I speak often about the generosity of people that we encounter along the way, about how they take such good freaking care of us. There's a little restaurant a couple doors down from the hotel in the town square, right? Been closed for hours. Might have been closed all day for all I know. But the people who run the place are at the festival, right? And we get to talking to them or whatever. They're like, hey, you guys should come over and, have a little nightcap or whatever at the restaurant, right? So like, okay, that sounds cool. So we go over to the restaurant and we go inside. And the next thing you know, there's like 20 people in the restaurant. And they got the fryers going. And they're cooking us up a snack, man. They're cooking us up those Dutch French fries that we love so well. And different stuff. Bornbroek, I guess. I don't know. A bunch of great Dutch treats. From this like pub style kind of stuff in this little restaurant. And we had the greatest freaking party there, man. And Joost put us up in the hotel and he served us like a 5-course thing that was amazing. And we played this show and everybody loved it. And then this after party with these people who are just so generous to us. And it warms your cockles, man, when you sit here and you haven't played a gig really in a year, and your prospects are looking dim, and you think to yourself, maybe that part of my life might be over now. I'm not sure. Might be. Might not be, but it might be. And then you look back fondly on these memories that you've had. And to go down the genealogical rabbit hole and trace my father's father's fathers all the way back to right there around Winterswijk, Netherlands. Warms your cockles, kids, and that's kind of what I've been doing. While I have not been making podcasts, I've been wrapped up in going down the genealogy rabbit hole, and I was, for about a hot week, obsessed with this attempted American takeover of European soccer. I'm not going to go into that because I know a lot of you probably aren't footy fans, but a consortium of American owners of European teams basically tried to take over European football for their own financial benefit. And the fans said, nope, we're not doing that. And the protests continued, by the way. So I became obsessed with that and with these genealogical discoveries. And a couple other important things happened in that few weeks that I wasn't around, okay? Number one, we had the second anniversary of the John Huff podcast. And it's become an anniversary tradition over the 2 years of the show's existence for me to not be doing shows when the anniversary comes. So that tradition is now well established. I seem to, every year or so, either take a little break or have a sort of crisis of the podcast where I have to figure out if I'm going to do it anymore or not. And that seems to fall on the anniversary. That's a cyclical thing. And that's probably the legacy of like elementary school, the school system. You've got this annual routine, and that becomes kind of the routine for your whole dang life. Well, I'm used to an annual routine, and my annual routine with the podcast seems to be when the year comes, I have a crisis about whether to do it or not. So that happened, but hey, that's 2 years. Who'd have thought? 73 now episodes, and I still have no idea what I'm doing or why, but I'm here today, so let's enjoy that, shall we? The other thing that happened that gives me a little bit of dissonance is that I was nominated for an award. I was nominated for a Forest City London Music Award. And that's the local awards program for music. The music scene here has, it's a really cool little program, actually. And I have been nominated directly several times as a member of Hiroshima Hearts for one of these things. We were, for 3 years running, nominated for Best Rock Band at the Forest City London Music Awards. And for 3 years running, we lost that award. So we are kind of the Buffalo Bills of the local music scene. And, okay, fine. And I've been sort of a peripheral winner. Artists I've played with have won while I'm playing with them. In fact, the last year that Hearts was nominated, the winner was Sarah Smith. But Sarah always wins one of these things in some category or another, and she's up for fan favorite this year. Anyways, there's a contributor category, all right? Contributor to the local scene. And somebody out there nominated me for that award. And it seems to have been based on my podcast, and so whoever nominated me for that, I don't know who it was. I would assume you're listening now, so I wanted to say thank you for that thought. I do appreciate it. Now, I don't know how much my particular show here contributes to the local music scene. I do talk about it a little bit in relation to the acts that I've played with and some of the shows we've done, but I don't know if this is a great booster of the scene. Maybe it could be more than it is. I don't know. I've done other stuff in the past that might qualify for that. The Groove Machine blog, for example, or some of the publicity work I do with artists, whatever. But I have not gone out looking for one of these awards. I just wanted to say thanks for the thought to whoever it is that nominated me, all right? And there's a whole vote process and all that stuff, and I don't want to get into it. But I do appreciate somebody thinking of me. It's very kind of you, and I hope that whatever I'm doing on this podcast when I'm doing it is contributing in some way to something positive for you. I don't mean you, the nominator. I just mean you generally. You, the listener. I hope this has given you something. Now, we're not exactly going to spin a record here, but I am going to tell you to go and listen to the new album by Cheap Trick, okay? You remember Cheap Trick, right, kids? Your mama's all right, your daddy's all right, they just seem a little, Cheap Trick, man. The hard thing about talking about a Cheap Trick record is that, what do you say as a comparison? Like anybody else I do the Black Swan, or do Serena Ryder. I can say, well, you may not be familiar with that act, but it sounds like this, and this. This is Cheap Trick, man. It sounds like freaking Cheap Trick. Cheap Trick is one of the bands you say when you're trying to describe somebody else's sound to somebody who hasn't heard that artist. And it sounds just like a Cheap Trick record, man, and that's what's great about it. For the record, my favorite Cheap Trick song is The Flame. I have fond memories of driving in Tori's Trans Am with the roof out after school on a sort of late spring day with The Flame playing on the radio. The Flame is my favorite Cheap Trick song. But this record, In Another World, released this year. It was actually the first single came out in 2018, but COVID and everything, they delayed the release of the album. In Another World, the new Cheap Trick album, sounds like a Cheap Trick album. You get shades of Aerosmith, you get shades of the Black Crowes, you get heavy shades, man, of the Beatles. And I'm noticing the Beatles popping up everywhere. The more I listen closely to music, particularly to music that I wouldn't normally listen to, the more I just feel the Beatles all over the place. And, there's nothing more clear than on this record where it closes with a cover of Give Me Some Truth, which is, of course, the great John Lennon song. And, there you go. You think there's a Beatles influence on this record? But what this is, man, is a guitar-driven rock and roll record about girls. And yeah, the Cheap Trick guys, I don't know if they're too old to be singing about girls now, but they're Cheap Trick, man. That's what they sing about, okay? And these are guitar-driven, pop rock, hard rock, rock and roll. It's freaking Cheap Trick. Sounds just like Cheap Trick, and it might be just what you need, man. So if you like some of the classic rock stuff I've talked about, if you like the Alice Cooper record, Ken the Zen, if you're listening, check out the new Cheap Trick record, In Another World. There's a great song on it. It's the second song on the album. It's called Quit Waking Me Up. And it's one of my favorite songs of the year. And it's what we need, man. This is a summertime record. And Quit Waking Me Up is a summertime tune, man. It's got a bit of a shuffle thing happening. There's a horn section. Cheap Trick, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how these bands do it who write such great freaking hooks, man. I cannot write hooks. I have a real problem with hooks. But these bands who function at the top of this game, if you've been around for 40 years like Cheap Trick and you're still knocking out hooks like this, that is a talent, man. It's also a skill, but it's got to come from someplace, man. Quit Waking Me Up, Cheap Trick. Go listen to that tune. Listen to a song called The Party. Listen to Passing Through. Some tender ballads on here, and there's just some big choruses, big guitars, rock and roll songs. And it's fun. That's the thing about Cheap Trick, man. Cheap Trick is fun. And this album is fun. And we're coming into the summer and it's a summertime album. Quit Waking Me Up. And it just feels good, man. It feels good to listen to some guitar-based rock and roll music about girls. Top down, driving out to the beach. Quit Waking Me Up by Cheap Trick. Go and check it out, all right? It's a fun album. I like it a lot. I've listened to it a lot. Normally, if I do a spin-in segment, I listen to the album for, a few days in the week and I get the flavor and I'm like, okay, this is what I want to say about it. This one's been on the dial for a few weeks now because I haven't done an episode and I've listened to it a lot and I like it. I like this record a lot. I think it's super cool. I think you might like it too, man. If you're into the rock and roll music about girls and summertime and sunshine, this is the album, so go check it out. In Another World by Cheap Trick makes me think of another world that we used to live in, man. Now, I couldn't leave you hanging any longer with the big band thing, all right? Gave you a list of big band songs, and the votes came in from all over the world about what you think my favorite big band song is. I gave you Moonlight Serenade. I gave you Take the A Train. I gave you Stomping at the Savoy. I gave you Pine Tops Boogie. I gave you The Very Thought of You. I gave you Begin the Begin, and I gave you In the Mood. My first favorite big band song that I noticed was In the Mood. Everybody knows that one. Everybody loves In the Mood. But it's not my favorite big band song, all right? Now, Gwendolyn wrote in, and she thought The Very Thought of You. And then she rethought The Very Thought of You, and then never did give me another answer. The Very Thought of You is a magnificent, gorgeous ballad. And I've heard people put lyrics to it, and that was great. And it's just a beautiful song. And it's probably my second favorite big band song, The Very Thought of You. My favorite, number one all-time top big band song is Begin the Begin. And you probably don't know Begin the Begin, but I'm going to put, if I can find one, a version of it on the John Huff podcast referenced on the pod playlist. I didn't want to leave you hanging on the big band game, kids. Begin the Begin. It's just such a toe tapper. It's happy, and the Glenn Miller Big Band Orchestra does a version of it that just cooks, man. Such a great song. The thing about these big band tunes is that they were all about the melody, man. You had to have the melody, and you had to have the dynamics. Most of them didn't have lyrics, okay? They didn't have amplification in those days. That's why they were big bands. You needed all those horns to be able to be heard in the hall. It's when you started having better amplification that you didn't need all those horns anymore, and your band went from like 15 pieces down to 4. Something like that. So there weren't a lot of vocals because you couldn't hear the vocals unless it was maybe on the radio. So you had to have the melody, man. The melody had to carry these tunes. Begin the Begin has one of those. And it sort of kicks at the end. It's just a beautiful song. It's a great song. Still makes me smile when I hear it, Maybe to make you smile too. So go listen to Begin the Begin. I'll put some Cheap Trick on that playlist. Go check it out. It's a running commentary on what we've talked about over the past 6 or 8 months. Didn't know how far I would get, and we got nearly an hour. And isn't that just the way it goes, kids? I hope you've been okay for the last few weeks. Good to see how this back thing goes. And I'm going to check out, man. Drop me a line. Let me know how you're doing, what you're listening to, what you think I should listen to. And, hey, I'll check you later. Thank you once again, gentle listener, for taking in today's show. If you want to know more about the program, go to www.john-huff.com. That's JOHN-HUFF.com and click on podcast. You can also find the show on Facebook at The John Huff Podcast. If you're an Instagram person, you can find me at JW_Huff. If you're a Twitter person, you can find me at JWSHuff. No matter where you listen to the show, please do me a big, big favor and leave a rating and review. Preferably a positive one. That's all the time we have for today, but I'll be back very soon. Until then, keep your wits about you, and remember, good things happen when you put yourself out there. Bye for now. Was going to do a really cool cheap trick closer, but mostly I've lost my voice.